Okay, so let's go into some of the questions. Let's go with first question in Johor. It's Mason. It says, my heart seems kind of weak and always crawls into a hole when difficulties come. How do I strengthen my heart? Great question, right? So yeah, what happens is when you habitually crawl into a hole, that's your reflex and you'll go straight to the hole every time. Can't help it. So how do you strengthen your heart? And strengthening is the right word. What does that mean? If you're going to strengthen muscles, you're not going to be strong from the first time you work out, which means you need to exercise. Now, what does it mean to exercise? Small exercises. Small. So whenever you're going through the situation, like, before you crawl into the hole, at least think about it for a minute. That's exercise. Because in the beginning, you'd go straight to the hole, but you have to sit there and say, no, all right, what's going on? Okay, now I'm going to the hole. And actually, that's better. It's actually exercising your heart and strengthening it step by step by step. What does that mean? It means that we have to become people that strengthen our hearts by kind of exercising it step by step. You're not going to be able to do it right away. A lot of you are going to need some strengthening to happen first. So come up with these small exercises of how you can be, how you talk to yourself, your body language, and also holding yourself and thinking about the situation first before you crawl into that hole. Cool. Let's go to Ken in Singapore. Ken in Singapore says, sometimes it's really hard to not be negative. Okay. Negative about myself. What's the best way to start becoming positive? Okay, so one thing I do want to tell you, becoming positive is actually a lot easier than you think. One of the problems we have when we're negative is you usually don't become negative openly. You're just negative in your head. And what happens in your head is like this place that everything is swirling. All these thoughts are swirling. What you need to do is, even if you're negative in your head, you must be positive with your lips. And one of the interesting things about your brain is when you're positive and you say things out loud, your brain can't tell if it comes from you or not. So it actually thinks that someone is telling you or encouraging you. And I tell you, studies all show it. If you're positive and you just keep saying, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, Sky, you're okay, Sky, it actually affects your mood and your brain. It really does. Which means the first thing is you need to speak out positively, even if you don't feel it. Why? It still affects you, even though you don't even mean it. It still affects you, as crazy as it is. That is a good way to start. Another way is, don't allow yourself to be thinking too much about it. Write it down or say it out, but be positive. Even if the thoughts are negative here, be positive what you write, your output, and be positive with what you're saying. Cool. Let's go to Yan Lan in KL. How can we know we made a mistake without people telling us? Well, interestingly, you can't. Because if you don't know, you'll never know you made a mistake, right? And I know something that's kind of the hard way to do it. The hard way is, if you tell people their mistakes, they for sure will tell you your mistakes. I guarantee it. Haven't you ever seen this? Hey, you're like this. Yeah, well, you're like this. It might hurt a bit, but you want to be nice about it. And I would say that would be last resort, but the best way is if you have a really close or trustworthy friend, Yan, I would definitely talk to them and ask them, hey, man, is there anything I'm doing wrong? Is there something I need to fix? It's a hard thing to ask, but that's why you need to go to someone you really trust. Go to someone you really trust and ask them, hey, is there something I need to fix? Because if there's anything I need to fix, please tell me because I trust you. Okay? So I would talk to someone you really, really trust and ask them to help you with the things that you need to fix. Cool. Let's go to Venancio Jimenez from the Philippines. What would we tell someone who asks why God would let good people die and not protect them from coronavirus? Okay. Good question. So this is a question I want to ask you is, just because someone gets coronavirus, does that make them an evil person? No, right? And everyone who doesn't get coronavirus is a bad person? And no, right? Which means that you have to first look at what is the basis of what they're asking you. Like, what are they really asking you? Because if they're if the premise of that question is, why would God let these good people get coronavirus? Well, what about this question? Why would he let Jesus die? Why would he let him get tortured? Is it because Jesus is wicked? And the answer is no. So what we have to do is we have to kind of think about what is the actual question that they're making, because technically speaking, it doesn't really make sense. Do all people with cancer, are they all wicked? No. Do Christians get cancer? Absolutely. It's just a part of life, part of responsibility. Do you think that if you're a Christian and you eat terrible food every day that you will be healthy? No. Part of it is personal responsibility. It is personal responsibility. And you have to get to this situation where you understand what they're exactly saying. Whether you get coronavirus or not doesn't make you bad or good. Makes no difference, right? That's something that only God knows. And another thing you can ask a person is, how do you know they're good? Like, honestly, if I asked you a question is, are you a really good person? Most people would say, well, because we all know ourselves behind closed doors. But people only see what they see on the outside. Do we really know who's good? But I think the big question you might have to ask is, does it make, whether you get coronavirus or not, does it make you good or bad? And the answer is no. It makes no difference. It makes no difference whatsoever, right? Let's go to Lo Chang Lim. Lo Chang Lim, I'm assuming he's from Malaysia. And it says, I want to buy a watch. Huh? Oh. You want to buy a watch, and your mom permitted you to do it, but recently you suffered from your card being eaten. Like someone ate your card in a foreign country. But they managed to transfer money to me, and I also pray to God that I wonder if I should get this watch. But in the end, I don't want to buy it because I need to use the money to eat, not by spending on stuff already. But today I got a dream that my mom is telling me that if you like it, you can buy it. I wonder, is it God telling me that I can buy that watch? And the answer is, this would be something that I really think that is a human responsibility, and it's up to you. It's really up to you. Yeah. If you're really struggling with it, usually, this would be something that no one else could tell you to do. But I really think that's something that you have to assess yourself. If I buy this watch, will I have enough to eat? If I buy this watch, am I okay suffering just a little bit, like not having as much food as I normally have? Or you can call your mom and say, hey, mom, this is a situation. If I buy this, I can't eat, so can you send a little bit more money? Right? So it's something that this is something that's more of between you and yourself. You want to buy a watch? God's not going to be sitting there like going, no, not the watch. Why? Because it's not going to affect your salvation or anything like that. It's just a watch, right? That is more of a personal thing that you should think about. Talk to your mom, look at your finances, and see what's best for you. Yeah. So don't worry about sitting there like, oh no, is this the will of God or not? It's a watch. So in most cases, it's not going to be something where it's going to be do or die, or all of a sudden, it's going to change the history of God. Right? So this is something I think that you can think about on your own, assess yourself, and then you can be the one that makes the final decision. Thank you. And Sam and KL, I believe this is the last question. Sam and KL says, what if my ego stops me from trying for I fear failure? And that is actually one of the biggest fears that actually more guys have than girls. Guys actually have this way more than girls, the fear of failure. Right? And we talked a little bit about this last week because if you fail at something, then you have to deal with that failure, which is even harder. Imagine if you had failure and no one knew and no one saw it. Actually, people would actually have an easier time failing. If your ego's in the way, what do you have to do? I would definitely say that you'd have to start training your ego to do things a lot easier and to kind of put your ego aside. And one of the things that, what does the ego stop you from doing a lot? Like, for instance, I would tell you, an ego also stops you from saying sorry and that you're wrong. And these are some good exercises that you should do is every time you do something wrong, you should apologize. And you have to say it's your fault, if it really is. The people with big egos, it's really, really hard. It's really hard, but it's something that you have to consciously work on. And I would have to say is you'd have to speak positively to yourself about, no, put down my ego, put down my ego, put down my ego. And I would do things that required you to put down your ego, like serving people, right? Don't be the one always receiving, but serve people so that you can put your ego aside. Yeah, so think about things that you can do to slowly kind of put your ego down. And it's not an easy thing, especially when it comes to guys too. Guys have big egos. Yeah. Oh, this is the last one. All right. Felix in PJ. This is the last question today. Being positive is good, but will it be a problem if someone is being too positive? Well, being positive is fine. Being too positive basically means naive. And that's a little bit different than being positive. Because I can look at every situation in a positive way, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be naive, right? Naive means you're not assessing the situation well, and you're going to think everything, no matter, I'm just going to do it. Why? Because it's going to be a positive outcome. That's not being positive. That's being naive, right? Being positive is looking at no matter what the situation, like you make a decision first. You made the decision, which has nothing to do with you being positive or negative. You assess the full situation, and then you tried something. And regardless if it works good or bad, then your positivity comes and says, hey, it's okay. You know, I tried, didn't work out. The next time I'll do better. But don't get mixed up with being naive and being positive, because you could be positive in every situation. Being too positive is not bad. It's only when you start to become naive and just start thinking this is different. Where you're like, no, it's always going to work. It's always going to be. No, you have to look at the real situation. How much money do I? It's like the same situation with Lim. I think the guy who talked about buying the watch. You got to think about the full situation. Look at all the sides. If I do this, then what do I miss? What do I sacrifice? If I get this, what do I sacrifice here? Right? And you're not doing it out of positivity like, oh, but the watch is so good, and I like this watch. It looks really good on me, so I should just buy the watch. Why? Because my mom gave me the money. Like, that's not being positive. That is being naive, right? So you can always be positive. Positive is fine. And you can never be too positive, but don't mix it up with being naive. Naive is now you're thinking that everything will work out no matter what, and that has nothing to do with positivity. That's more of being naive, and you're not discerning or understanding the situation really well, if that makes more sense. Okay? Well, that brings us to the very end of today's Lockdown Tuesday. Hey guys, thanks for watching. This is Sky. Make sure you click subscribe, obliterate that like button, leave some comments, and support us on Patreon. All right, catch you later.